Israel dirty politics exposed. What is going wrong with Israel? Welcome to our YouTube channel, The Finest Forever. Israel, where today more than 6 lakh people got down on protest. A country where today from the hospital to the airport everything has come to a standstill. And these protests are so intense that Navy and war soldiers are taking leaves and joining these posters. And not just that. Worldwide, many embassies have involved themselves in this protest by shutting down their offices. Now you must be thinking, what is going on in Israel that so many people are involved in such intense protests? Actually, people are saying that Israel's Prime Minister Mr. Benjamin Netanyahu are bringing such changes in country's judiciary which will change this only democratic country and Middle East country in dictatorship. The surprising thing is that some such judicial changes Prime Minister of our country Mr. Narendra Modi too had brought. Then what is the truth? Will Benjamin Netanyahu, after doing such changes in judiciary, will declare himself in absolute power Israel like Jinping and Putin? Is Israeli moving towards dictatorship? And most important question, what difference does all this make to us Indians? After all, what to learn for us Indians from these protests? Chapter 1 Background. All these protests began when, on the 11th of January 2023, Justice Minister of Israel, Mr. Yariv Levin, on the behalf of Benjamin Netanyahu, started making some amendments to curtail the power of the Supreme Court. Now, before we understand these amendments, first of all, it is important for us to understand what are those 4 pillars, on which any democracy stands. Because until you understand these 4 pillars, till then you won't be able to understand the impact of amendments done by Netanyahu. These 4 pillars are: first pillar is legislature, which makes the laws. Second pillar, executive, who applies these laws in system. Third is judiciary, that ensures that the laws which are applied are being followed properly or not. And at last comes free media. Those people who ensure that whether government is taking right steps or not. Now, any powerful democratic country ensure that the power of these pillars, especially first and third pillar, should not overlap each other. That is, if the legislature makes any law, then executive bodies have the responsibility that those laws can be implemented properly in the whole society. If the executive bodies are not able to implement the laws properly, then in that case, the judiciary can punish the executive body. If the legislative body makes such a law that violates the fundamental rights of people, then in that case also the judiciary can punish the legislative body, and can also strike down the laws made by them. But it does not mean that judiciary, legislature and executive bodies interfere each other. Even their power has its limits. And this whole system protects democracy from dictatorship. And this is called separation of power. The advantage of which is that if any pillar tries to overuse its power, then other pillar keep that in control. In all the democratic countries you can clearly see the separation of power. But not in the case of Israel. You don't see this thing so easily in Israel. The biggest flaw in the Israeli system is that the separation power we see between executive and legislature bodies, that is missing in Israel from initial days. Second biggest flaw is that in the Israeli system there is no written constitution. Yes, you heard it right. Despite being a democratic country, there is no written constitution in this country. Because of having no written constitution, Israeli government makes such laws many times that breach the basic fundamental rights of people. Because judiciary is very powerful in Israel like India. So judiciary, by using it judicial review system, don't let the government pass such laws, which breach the fundamental rights of people. And this is the root of these protests.
Because the Israeli government judicial is bringing some amendments to reduce the power of judiciary. And they have kept its name judicial overall. Chapter 2, Amendments. What are those amendments in the whole judiciary system because of which people are having so many problems? The question is what those amendments are and why are people having so much problem because of them? First amendment, this amendment says that now Israeli government has such power due to which they can reject any decision of Supreme Court. That is, if tomorrow the Supreme Court takes any decision, then the government can revert it by gaining the majority. Second amendment gives Israeli government the responsibility of appointing the president and vice president of Supreme Court. And not just that, now the government has the responsibility to appoint other judges of Supreme Court. And earlier, there was a minimum criteria of appointing the judges that the judge has to serve in lower court. Now that criteria has been removed. According to the President rule in Israel, to appoint the judges in the Supreme Court, a judicial election committee is made consisting 9 members. But now the numbers has been increased to 11. And now it is compulsory that 7 out of 11 members would be appointed by the government, directly or indirectly. Now you will know from all these things that how much influence the government has over judiciary. That means the government will have full control that which judge would be appointed for Supreme Court, and which judges won't be selected. Third Amendment. According to this amendment, Supreme Court gets the power to strike down the decisions made by government when all 15 judges take decision together. If any of the judges didn't vote, then they can never strike down or reverse the law made by the government. And suppose they reverse the law, but still Israeli government has the power that they can turn any decision of Supreme Court. Now all these things clearly shows that how the government is controlling the judiciary. Due to this fear, Eliakim Rubinstein, the former deputy president of Supreme Court, had to warn people. He told people that if these reforms come, then no one can stop it from becoming a democratic dictatorship country. Also, former Supreme Court President Mr. Aharon Barak called these reforms poison pills. He said that if these reforms come, then people won't have any way of securing their rights. Now this question must be in your mind then: if Israel is able to run so smoothly, then what is the need for a judicial overhaul? What is their benefit from this? Netanyahu and his supporters think that Israeli judiciary is becoming autocratic. Where this judiciary should have co-relation with other democratic pillars, but now this judiciary is imposing its power on other pillars. Netanyahu also said that most of the judges in judiciary don't represent Israeli people. That's why these new reforms would ensure the contribution of Israeli people, and along with that, Netanyahu, to validate his point, gave the example of USA. And told that the parliament appoints the judges in USA. But even after giving all the clarifications, opposition leader Yair Lapid didn't agree to this. That's why opposition leaders accused Netanyahu. They said that Aryeh Deri, the Interior and Health Minister, when Supreme Court had cancelled his membership due to bribe case, since then Netanyahu is in tension. They said that there are many criminal case going on many members like Aryeh Deri. If the court found them guilty and cancelled their membership, then Netanyahu's government will fall instantly. Not just that, Netanyahu is accused of corruption and bribery. And his membership can be cancelled at any time. It is being assumed that if Netanyahu has to save his and his members' membership, then it's very important for him to have control on judiciary. And that is the reason they are bringing the amendments through judiciary overhaul. As soon as these amendments were proposed, law experts started raising voice against it. And when common people understood these amendments, they also started doing protests. Seaports, airports and other transport lines were closed. In addition, all the Israelis worldwide also started raising their voice. Not just that, Israel's embassies in foreign countries, people protested there also and shut them down. But this protest goes at its peak when on March 26, Israel's defense minister, Yoav Gallant, is fired. Because he had asked Netanyahu to reconsider the amendments and think more about people. But due to his stubbornness, Netanyahu fired him instantly. This one incident amplified the whole protest. Due to which, a huge protest march was taken out. That protest march was the biggest protest march in the history of this country. Because more than 6 lakh people were protesting on road at one time. That number is so big that contributes the 7% of its total population. Even thousands of people reached Prime Minister's house to protest. Netanyahu was evacuated after so many difficulties. After which, Yair Netanyahu, the son of Netanyahu, asks his supporters to support these amendments by declaring those protests US funded. Due to which, the protest, which was going on in peaceful manner, had become violent because of division in 2 groups. And this situation has become so worse that the President Isaac Herzog had to ask Netanyahu to take the amendments back. In fact, by seeing the clashes between 2 groups, he said if we don't stop them now, then our country can face the situation of civil war. Protests had become violent. Protesters weren't ready to step back. And people put so much pressure that Netanyahu had to stop all the reforms. Today, these protests have reduced considerably. But you'll still find people on the streets, and Netanyahu had to accept people's demands. Protesters think that when all things will be fine, Netanyahu would bring these reforms again. Apart from this, In all the previous terms of Netanyahu, he has tried to introduce such laws that makes democracy weaker. In the year 2018, an attempt was made to revert the basic laws, in which they were talking about making non-Jews second-class citizens. And due to these actions of Netanyahu, protesters aren't trusting Netanyahu. Now, most important, what we, as Indians, can learn from the situation of Israel. You would be very surprised to know, by executive and government, many efforts have been made to control judiciary. But all thanks to our constitution, that it is made in such a way that no matter how hard the government tries, it can never overpower judiciary. From Indira Gandhi to Narendra many times till Modi, from our government many times, our government has tried to reduce the power of Indian judiciary. But every time, it becomes invalid due to written constitution. In fact, after Narendra Modi became the Prime Minister, there has been tussle many times between judiciary and the government. After 2014, by making the National Judicial Appointments Commission Bill, the government tried to take the control of appointment of Supreme Court and High Court. But even after it was passed in Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha, in October 2015, Supreme Court rejected this bill. And currently, to appoint the judges of Supreme Court, collegium system is used, where CJI along with foremost senior judges of Supreme Court of India, all these together, give recommendation to appoint other judges. And the government has to accept these recommendations. Sometimes, the government tries to establish its control by delaying the process, but still, our Indian judiciary has stayed independent. And that is the reason, our condition isn't like Israel. So yes, as citizens, it's our duty to stay updated regarding 4 pillars of the democracy: legislature, executive, judiciary and free media. So that if there is something wrong, then we can stop them by raising voice against it. And yes, if you learned something from this video, then please like this video and subscribe the channel, so that you never miss such powerful videos. Thanks for watching.